What up, Entourage? It's the Fantasy Football Rapper here, and welcome back. Today we are going to go over a very important video. I haven't seen too many people discuss this, at least discuss it the way I'm about to break it down to you today. If you're new here, guys, make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell for notifications because we're about to get deep. Well, guys, let's get into it. All right, so I'm going to talk about your favorite position, at least according to my DMs, because everybody is blowing me up talking about the tight end position, which was absolutely atrocious last year, with the exception of 3 players, which I recommend you don't draft. Yeah, Kelce, Kittle, Ertz, guys, I understand why they're going so high because they had such amazing years, but we'll begin with Kelce. He had a career year last year. Actually, they all did. 1,300 yards, 1,300 plus yards, 10 touchdowns, and over 100 receptions from the tight end position, which would have been a top 10 receiver. So I see the allure. I see why you would want to pick him, because a lot of you think it's like a cheat. It's like, I have an extra wide receiver. I could plug in a tight end. It puts me head and shoulders above everybody else. I get all that. However, what about the downside? Look at the guys that you're passing up to get Kelce, like a Joe Mixon, like a Mike Evans. These are elite running backs, elite receivers that you can only find in the first 2 rounds. After that, guys, so if you pick, let's say you're in the middle of the first, because Kelce goes in the middle of the second, so chances are you're picking in the middle of the first, you go Davante Adams. Awesome pick. Then you go to second, you go Travis Kelce. Not so awesome pick. You go to the third. Now here, you got to pick your RB1, essentially, I hope, unless you go 0 running back strategy, which I don't recommend. And the guys you have to pick with in the middle of the first round all have question marks. Aaron Jones injury prone, Chris Carson injury prone. Derrick Henry is currently coming off a calf strain and he's touchdown dependent. Devontae Freeman's coming off an injury. So all these guys in the middle of the 3rd round, if you're lucky and get a David Montgomery, I do like him, but there's no telling you're going to get David Montgomery in the middle of the 3rd round. Sometimes he could go in the end of the 2nd, depending on the league, high 3rd round. So anyway, so what happens if, like many running backs, your RB1 gets injured? Now you're down to guys like, depending how you draft, I don't know if you're going to keep, selecting running backs in the next 2 rounds, but the 4th round, the 5th round, you're Sony Michel's, more question marks. There are some gems, but again, you got to know how to select. At least in my opinion, I think guys like Tevin Coleman, Phillip Lindsay in the 5th, Duke Johnson, wherever he's going nowadays, that Lamar Miller's out for the year. So depending what you do, it still puts your team behind the 8 ball. And then what if something happens to Travis Kelce? Then you're basically completely done. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if something happens to whoever you pick in the 2nd that's not Travis Kelce, like a Joe Mixon or Mike Evans? Well, you see, because there's so few good tight ends, if you don't select a tight end early, you're just like everybody else, okay? But you win with the running back position. It's the most consistent position, has the highest upside, as long as you get those PPR guys like a Joe Mixon. But if something happens to your tight end, now you don't have an elite running back or receiver, whichever one you elected to go in the first. If you went Adams, then you don't have an elite running back. If you went a guy like Nick Chubb, then you don't have an elite receiver, because you could only get, guys, there's only like 5 or 6 elite receivers. You got Devontae Adams, you got DeAndre Hopkins, you got Juju. Those guys are consistent like a running back. Everyone else, even a guy like Michael Thomas, he was the 6th best receiver. I think he had almost or he had 8 games outside of a wide receiver 3. James Conner also was the 6th for running backs, and he had no games of a running back 3. So you see, there's a consistency difference between running backs and receivers. And like I said, if you go with a running back there, and then you get a tight end later, which there's some gems. A Hunter Henry you could get at the end of the 6th, maybe even the 7th. Austin Hooper you could get easily in the 9th or 10th. Then you got a guy like Jack Doyle, whose stock should be going up because the last time he played with Jacoby Brissett, he was the 6th best tight end as far as points per game in PPR. So what I'm trying to say here, guys, is do not bank so much on one position, because a guy like Travis Kelce, for instance, he's turning 30 this year. He has a lot of hits. He's just came off ankle surgery, so there is some risk associated, and he had a career year. How many years do you think he's going to have of over 100 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns? It's a career year for a reason, guys. That's arguably, I think, one of the highest, if not the best, fantasy season ever. Now a guy like George Kittle. George Kittle is probably arguably my biggest bust, definitely in the tight ends, because, guys, he's going in the 3rd round, and we have to look at the situation. He's another one. He had over 1,300 yards receiving, 88 receptions, only 2 touchdowns, but he broke the record for most receiving yards in the season. Again, career year. But that was with Nick Mullins. Now, I know Jimmy G's better, but that makes me even more worried because he can push the ball downfield. Not to mention, they got way more weapons this year. They have the rookie Deebo Samuel, who looks like a legit wide receiver. They have Dante Pettis coming back, who only played like 4 games last year. Marquise Goodwin missed most of the year. They also drafted Jalen Hurd, and they have their running backs, who also demand a lot of targets. I'm talking about Tevin Coleman, who they signed in the offseason, and Matt Breida as well. So there's only going to be so many targets, and their defense is going to be a lot better. Last year, the 49ers spent all their games playing from behind, playing catch-up, and they had nobody to throw the ball to. So when you have nobody to throw the ball to, it's got to go somewhere, and it went to Kittle. It's like that basketball player, that NBA player on a bad team is just lighting up the scoreboard the way Kevin Love did in Minnesota before he came to Cleveland. And then he came to Cleveland, and it was like, what happened to that guy who was averaging 25 points and like 14 rebounds? Similar situation in fantasy. When there's nobody else, yeah, you can accumulate a lot of points, especially a lot of garbage points when you're playing and you're throwing the ball the whole game. So George Kittle, guys, again, is somebody I will be very weary. You're going to tell me George Kittle is 3 to 4 rounds better than Hunter Henry? No freaking way, guys. Again, get your running back. Build that depth. Because chances are, and this is why I tell people, you want at least 6 to 7 running backs, if your league allows it, on your roster, because half are either going to bust or get injured, possibly more. So you want to stack, because there's 3 tiers, guys. There's your elite running backs that you could only get in the 1st or 2nd round. I'm talking about your Chubbs, your Dalvin Cooks. I am including him in there. Obviously, your Kamaras, your Barkleys, all those guys. And then you got the 2nd tier, which are like the mid-round, your Sony Michels, your all these question marks. And then you got the stash backs, the guys that you're going for upside. Damian Harris, Darwin Thompson, you know the names, okay? So what I'm trying to say here, guys, Kittle, the 3rd round, is grounds for disaster. Because if you miss on that, if he's a bust, and he could be a bust without being a bust. What I mean by a bust is I think Kittle will get 900 yards receiving, 7, 8 touchdowns minimum, probably around the same amount of receptions, 70 to 80 receptions. But that doesn't warrant 3rd down value. Because I think a guy like Austin Hooper, who's going in the 10th or 11th, I would even select him in the 9th, can give you the similar production. And for sure, Hunter Henry can as well. Now we got Zac Ertz. Zac Ertz, guys, another one. He broke the record for most receptions by a tight end in a season. Career year. Again, like Kittle, different quarterback. Nick Foles was the quarterback for most of that season. So, red flag, red flag. They also got this stud named Dallas Goedert, who's been tearing it up in the offseason. They're going to put 2 tight ends. He's going to take away those touchdowns. He's going to take away those receptions. That guy is a freak athlete. You don't just keep that guy on the sidelines, and you don't – it's not going to be any scenario where he's not going to eat into Zac Ertz targets. So 3rd round for a guy like Ertz, it's just way too rich for me, guys. There's just way too much value, and I mentioned 3 of them. Hunter Henry in the 6-7, Austin Hooper, 9, 10, 11, depending on your league. And then Jack Doyle's going undrafted. Load up at a position that wins you fantasy leagues. an elite receiver first 2 rounds, an elite running back, and stack that running back position and wait later for a tight end. It's so important because we know running backs are going to go down, and there's only so many of them. You could win without a tight end. Most championship teams do not have an elite tight end. I've been playing fantasy football for like 20 years. I've never seen a championship team win with picking a tight end early. Now, they win by having an elite tight end. Like 1 year, maybe a couple years ago, I won. I had Travis Kelce during his breakout year, but I got him in like the 6th round. Even last year, Travis Kelce was going in the 3rd round. Okay? So you could win with elite tight ends, but I've never seen a team win with picking a tight end early. I've only seen it backfire. Look up Gronkowski if you have any more questions on that. So, all in all, guys, get your running backs early, stack them deep, get those value tight ends later, because if you miss, it's at the end. It's not going to shoot your draft or kill your draft entirely. And if you have any questions, like always, comment down below and let me know what you think of this video. And subscribe if you haven't already. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Until next time.